Hey, good people. Got a good video for you guys today. I'm going to be reviewing my Citadel Ocean Katana. I got this katana a month ago and I'm really enjoying it. It's really nicely built. It is, the company's name is Citadel, and then this model is called the Ocean Katana. So it kind of has on the fittings, it has ocean theme on it. And the nice thing about this katana is it's 100% handmade in a factory in Cambodia, and they make it very similar to the traditions of the old Japanese samurai when they were making the katanas, the sword makers for the samurai. The difference is this blade is not folded. It is a solid 1075 steel, but they do put it in the furnace with the charcoal, put the air to it, get it red hot, bring it out, and then they have three guys hitting it with a sledgehammer to get it into shape. And then the sword maker will take over at a certain spot and get the katana just exactly to specs. And when I show you everything, I think you'll see that this katana is very well done. The factory in Cambodia. They've been making this ocean katana since 1999, or at least the factory's been up since 1999. The katana, the ocean katana, came a bit after that. At first, they made them in limited quantities. They were only going to make 100 of them total for the world, but they became so popular. They sell every one they make. And if you go on to Cult of Athena or Swords of the East or Cass Iberia, the distributors for this katana, there's usually a 8 week to 6 month to a year waiting list. So you could be waiting a while to get this katana. I happened to research it and I reached out to Swords of the East and asked if they had one. And they said that somebody had ordered one and they backed out of the deal. So they refunded them their money. And then they went ahead and I bought this one. So I didn't even have to wait. But I have been researching this katana for over a year, actually 2 years. So 2 years I started, and then I really wanted a katana. I wanted one that the saya, the scabbard for the sword, did not shake, rattle, and roll, and that kept it inside. You can see, keeps it inside the saya, the blade, really well. And then with just a little flick of the thumb, you can get it out. And I did pay $2,700 for this katana, but I did get a 5% coupon from Swords of the East. So that took $135 off. And then if you're not in South Carolina, you can get no sales tax. So sales tax on $2,700 at around 8% in California, that adds up to a lot of money that I saved. And I was really thankful to get this katana. Like I said, I went on a journey a couple years ago and I started looking at like $250 katanas, $500,000, $1,500, and they all did the rattling or they would fall out of the saya, and or the fittings didn't have any detail to them. And none of these fittings, nothing on here is stamped out steel. It's all 100% hand carved, handmade in the factory in Cambodia. They rarely use any power tools. Everything's done pretty much by hand. The polishing of the blade, the sharpening of the blade, the fittings, they cast them with iron and then they end up bluing some of them. I'll go over those just for you in a second, but I just want to give you an overview of what brought me to this katana. And yes, I'm very happy with it, and I'll show you some of the reasons why. Okay, I'm going to start from this end of the katana, and this is called the kashira. And on this katana, it actually is carved, hand carved into a rain pattern. You can kind of see that kind of flowing with the ocean theme. So it's carved into like a really nice rain pattern there. And it is iron. and then they take it, the kashra, and it's tapped out and fitted and cast just for this suka, so that it'll fit right on the suka. And then the suka ito and the makadome, where the knot is right here when they wrap everything together. And then the makadome or the suka make is the knot that they tie right on the end after they get all of this silk ito tied, the wrapping of the katana, this brown part, and then they do a nice knot at the end, and it keeps everything super snug and super tight. So that was all done in the traditions. And then going to the suka or the handle of the sword, the ito, this is 100% silk, from authentic silk from Japan, and it starts off white, and then they hand dye it in tea leaves to get it this beautiful brown color. And I really like the katanas that have a little bit different color, whether it be blue ito or this brown ito or green ito. But the black ito is nice, but I feel like it's just so common on katanas that I really like the way that they went to this type of a color for the ocean katana. Very nice. Kind of, in my opinion, maybe they were looking maybe to match the color of sand, going with the ocean uh, theme, but I'm not sure. And then coming to the suka itself, the handle, it is two pieces of hinokoi wood. Hinokoi wood is what they use for the handle, and they also use it to make the saya. It's in the traditions of the samurai. It's a wood that grows in Japan and in the forests of Japan on their islands, and it is related to the cypress or the juniper or the sequoia tree, and it has a really nice sweet smell to it. But it's a beautiful wood. I'll show you the saya in a bit. But then they take two halves, they take two halves of the wood, the hinoki wood, and they make the handle, and then they glue it together, the handle, and then they sand it down, and then they go ahead and they put the next layer on. So this all goes on in the very inside of here. In the very inside is the tang of the katana, and it's called the nakago. And I always like that because there was a warship in Japan during World War II that was actually called the Nakago. So that, I thought that was kind of a neat history thing. So then the Nakago, so then this whole handle comes on, and then in here, this white part inside the diamonds, okay, that is stingray, authentic stingray, and it is called samigawa or sam. And that is has really nice nodules on it, the bumps, and that also helped the samurai in ancient times to hold on to the sword, to have better grip with the sword, whether it was sweat, blood on their hands, or whatever, even in battle, they would have that. But you can see that. And the nice thing about this Samigawa wrap is it is a full wrap around the suka. So again, the wood part in the very inside here on the Nakago, then they take the Samigawa and they wrap it around completely. And again, it has just really nice nodules in there and gives a really nice grip to the katana. And then the next layer, they would tap the suka in place with these little bamboo pegs. There's one here and there's one here. So here and here. And those are the two pegs. They're made out of bamboo. And those are what tap into the Nakaga Ana or the Makugi. These are called Makugi pegs. And they tap into the Makugi Ana. Ana just means hole. So there's two holes in the Nakago. And that's what keeps this whole katana in place. The handle to the sword, to the blade, the toshin. And the nice thing about these Makugi pegs is they're also hand done so they fit perfectly into the suka. And then the next layer would be the ito, which is the silk wrap, this brown part I talked about earlier. And you can see it's super, super tight. There's no give at all, not even a little bit of give. And that's what you want. A lot of the lower price katanas, I saw that they slid around a bit more, like you could push them forward. These don't move at all. Whoever wrapped this ito onto the suka ito did such an amazing job. And you can see the diamonds. They're perfect shape. They match all the way down. That's another thing you kind of want to look for, is a good division of the diamonds. Do they match up and are they equal? So that concludes the suka ito, or the handle. So we got the kashira, then we've got the ito, the samigawa. And one thing I do want to mention too, there's these two little brass fittings. There's one here and there's one here, and it's inside the ito, and it goes right on the samigawa, and then they wrap the ito around it. At first, I thought those were grasshoppers, but they're actually not grasshoppers. They're praying mantis. So that was even a better idea, I thought. And then that also helped the samurai when they held onto the sword. They had one on the top, one on the towards the toshin, the blade, and then one on the back. So this is how they would hold the katana, and then that gives them a better grip. So they've got lots of things to help them grip onto the katana. They have the samigawa, the ray skin, they have the manuki, and then they have the ito. Okay, and then moving down a bit is this part right here. This matches the kashira, so it matches the kashira, and this is called the fuchi, this metal piece right here at the very end of the suka. So this part that I'm touching right here, and that also matches the kashira, as it should in traditional Japanese sword making, and that is called the fuchi. See if I can get you a good look at that. And that is called the fuchi, and that goes on the end. And then there's two brass washers. There's one here just past the fuchi, and then there's one here. And they're called seppa right in here. And those are just basically spacers, or what we would call washers. So that is a really nice look. And then we have the suba, which is right here. This is what we would call the handguard of the sword or the katana. And this is actually done in an ocean wave theme, which looks really, really nice. And that is hand cast also, hand dyed. They make the dye using wax. And then they take a little hand tool, little steel saw, and they actually cut the waves of the ocean. So here's the suba, this part here, and then they do the waves. That would be the ocean waves. So that is a really nice touch also. And that is also blued. So it's the bluing like you would blue onto a gun. Like if you're bluing a gun, it's the same type of bluing, which really turns out quite nice. And then the part, it's called, like we would call a collar, to fit into the end, the koiguchi of the saya, the scabbard. And that is made out of copper. And that is the habaki right here. This part right here, this copper area that I'm touching right now. And that is the habaki. And what that does, when we go into the saya, you can see this part here, the habaki, that locks the katana in so that it will not fall out. As the samurai were running or walking or going to battle or even getting ready to draw their katanas, it would only come out when they gave the little bit of a thumb flick or pulled on the suka, the handle, to get it out. And you can see how nicely that fits in. And that also is made by hand just for this katana to fit this blade, because every blade's not going to be the same since it's all handmade. And so you're going to get all of these parts working together. And I quite like the different materials on this area. You've got the iron, which is the fuchi. You've got the suba that is iron. Then you have the seppa that are brass. And then you have the habaki that is made out of copper. And again, the habaki right here. And it even has the groove, the bohi, that matches the bohi or the groove on the blade, the toshin. And I'll show you that a little bit later. And then I will go ahead now and go into the saya. Set this down for a second. So this saya is also, of course, handmade, and it is actually lacquered a deep, deep, deep navy blue. So it's not black, it's actually a dark blue. And the nice thing about this saya, or the scabbard that holds the sword, is they take the two pieces of hinakoi wood and they cut them in half. One goes on top here, one goes on top here. Then they draw it out with a pencil and then they cut it. That's one of the few times they do use a powered saw, is to cut the wood. And then they put the two pieces together and they sand it all down. And then while they're doing, before they get it, they make sure it fits this certain blade, this one of a kind blade, because they're all going to be a little different because they're made by hand. They're not just a stamp of steel. And then they put the two ends and they make sure everything's sanded down so it holds that katana like I showed you, and it won't shake, rattle, and roll. So, and then also they cut out an inlay. So they cut out a little groove into the saya here. And then this is actually a Samigawa wrap. So it is a stingray wrap to match the stingray or the Samigawa on the suka on the handle. And then it's sanded down and it's inlaid. So it's not on the outside. It actually lays within the wood, the hinakoi wood. They sand it down and you can't even feel where the seam is. It's just flawless. It's perfect. And another, just attention to detail. This whole katana was loved by somebody or people that just really love what they're doing. It shows. And then on the very end right here, this is where the habaki of the katana goes in. And that is actually made out of buffalo horn. The hinakoi wood is inside there. And then the outside collar that holds the habaki, this is actually buffalo horn, and they do buff that out and get a nice polish on that. And the opening here of that is called the koiguchi. The opening where the habaki goes inside, that's called the koiguchi, and it just literally means the koi's mouth or the carp's mouth, because koi are related to goldfish actually. But they're highly prized and collected and traded and worth a lot of money. So you have that, this buffalo horn here, and then moving down to the end, this is called the kojiri, and it's the butt of the saya or the scabbard, the sword, what holds the blade in place, and that is also made out of buffalo horn, as it should be, and it is sanded down and buffed out to a high polished gloss, and that looks really super nice. And then going over here, this part holds the sageo, this part right here, and this the sageo is the, it's a, I did receive that, I just haven't tied it to my saya yet. But that also was Japanese silk, and that also is done in navy blue. Looks really nice. And then you have a washer inside here. And then you have And this part here, this is where the sageo, the rope, goes in, and that's what would tie to the belt of the samurai around their belt to hold the katana in place as they walked, ran, sat down, went into battle, whatever. And this is called the kurigata, this whole section right here that I'm touching right there. That's the kurigata, and that has two brass washers also, and they're held into place, perfect place. And those washers are called shitadome on this part here. And those are also made out of brass. And a lot of katanas, those will fall out, but these are in there, again, handmade, hand carved, and placed into the perfect spot. So that's about the end of the saya. Again, henakoi wood related to the jasper, the cypress, or the sequoia. And the nice thing about it is it's a really sweet smelling wood, almost like a flower, a nice smelling flower. It's a beautiful wood. Okay, and now I will move on to the most important part, is the blade. So this is our blade, called the toshin for the whole blade in Japanese. And that has this curve down here. This is called the sori. And this has a nice sori to it, a nice curve. And that helps with the balancing of the katana when it's in your hand. And this one, this is not a super light katana. It's also not super heavy, but it is a very, very nice shape of the blade. I really think it's a beautiful example. And then the back of the blade right here, this is called the mune, M-U-N-E. So the mune, or the moon, and that is the what would be considered not the curve, not the sori, but the actual back of the blade right there. And I will be cleaning this when I'm done and re-oiling it. You never want to touch the blade. You want to help it. If you have oil on your fingers, it can start rusting. But as soon as I'm done with my review, I will be cleaning my blade and oiling it again. So this is called the mune, this whole back part of the blade from here to here. And then the curve of the blade right here, this curve, that is called the bohi. Some people think that's where the blood would be drained when the samurai stabbed something uh, of flesh, but it's actually not. The bohi is actually helped and put into the blade. They typically put them in higher end blades, and those are to cut down on some of the weight of the overall blade, and again, to help with balance. And I've also heard this just called the he or the high, but I like the two words together, the bohi, the groove of the sword. And then coming down a little bit, if you could see the pattern, there's a wavy pattern that's in this area just above the blade, the sharp part down here. If the camera will pick that up, that's called, so I'll see if I can get that nice and easy. Get that in place. That's called the hamon. So that wavy pattern in the blade, and that comes from differentially hardening this blade. The nice thing about it is the hamon, this wavy part down here just above the blade, or the ha, that's also called the ha. So the hamon is the waviness. And what they do after they take this blade and put it into the fire, get it red hot, they pound it out. Well, when it's all shaped into the blade that the swordsmith likes, then they take different types of clay and put it on the blade, all on the blade. And then they take it, they put it into the fire one last time, get it super red, orange hot, pull it out, dip it into room temperature bath of water, and then that hardens the steel. But they want to harden the steel differentially, and I'll explain that in just a second. And then what happens is you get from the ha, the blade, the sharp part of the blade, to the top of the hamon, that wavy area, you get a hard steel, which you want because the blade is what's going to be going into whatever you're cutting, and you don't want chips on that blade. You don't want that blade to fail, and you want it to be able to keep sharp and stay sharp. So that area of the hard part of the steel is called the yakiba. And that is the hard part. So from the ha to the top of the hamon, and then this part right here on the blade above the hamon to the mune, the back of the sword, that's where you want the softer section. So your blade, when you cut into something or you're just swinging it, it actually has some give and it flexes a little bit. And that way it won't break the blade. It keeps the blade, from snapping in two or breaking in half. But that part is called the Ji, the softer section of the blade, the Ji. And that's the softer section. So the yakiba is the hard part, the Ji is the softer part from the hamon to the mune. Okay, and then I'll just keep going down further. So now we get down to the tip of the blade and the very end tip right here. I won't touch that because it's razor blade sharp, probably sharper than a razor blade. That's called the kasaki. Okay, and that is your point of the blade. Okay, and then the part just past the point, the kasaki, is right here, this flat area. So it's just in this area right here. And that's called the boshi. Okay, and then there's a line from differentially hardening the blade. It's a line that goes right here, and that's part of the differentially hardening of the blade. And that's called the Yakoti or the Yakoti line. So you have the kasaki, then that flat part behind the kasaki, the point, that flat part is called the boshi. And then the line, it's not quite a vertical line, it kind of goes up, kind of horizontally actually, goes up and then curves a bit. And that's called the Yakoti. And that's from differentially hardening the blade. So really nice katana, feels great in the hands. It's a good cutting. And when you swing it in the air, it makes a nice sound. That's called the hagasi sound. And that's the sound that a sword makes when it's coming down. It's real nice. And then there's a part of this blade that this blade doesn't have called the hara. And that's actually the grain that you can see in the blade. The pattern, like if you take Damascus, that pattern in Damascus, all those different lines and different pattern, different hara pattern, that is actually from folding the blade over and over again and then stacking the tamahagane, which is Japanese steel. It's basically the steel that they have in Japan. It's sand mixed with steel mixed with glass. So back in when they started the samurai swords, making the katanas in probably around the 1100s, when they first started seeing samurai and samurai swords, the smiths, Japan didn't have very good steel that was natural to their land, to their grounds and their minerals. So they would take what they had, and it's called tamahagane, is the type of steel in Japan, which the swordsmiths in Japan still use, the ones that make the authentic katanas, like $5,000 on up katanas. So they take the steel and they keep folding it, tap it down, put it in the fire again, the charcoal, get it red hot, bring it out, pound it down. And I notice a lot of pounding when they do it now, even the traditional sword makers of Japan, when they pound it down, they use a an electric machine that has a big cast iron boom, boom, boom that pounds it down. But even they don't do the pounding down by hand. Some do, but most of them just use that. But in Cambodia, when they made this katana, this ocean katana, they didn't. They don't use that machine. They do it all by hand in the traditions of the sword makers in Japan, the early ones, and they just keep pounding that steel down, bring it out, pound it, and then you've got this. So this doesn't have a hata in it where it shows it does have the hamon from the differentially hardening. Again, go over it real quick. This part here, this little wavy pattern down here is the hamon just above the ha, which is the blade. And that part is from differentially hardening. But when you look at this, it's a solid piece of steel. So it doesn't have that hata or that grain in it. And yeah, I was really happy to pick this one up. If you guys do want one, I would recommend going through the Swords of the East is what I did, and I feel like I got a great price. This price on this katana, from what I could see, has been there for like many years, at least 5 years moving forward. The price hasn't changed, and they sell every one they make. I would think that they could raise their prices, maybe even up towards 3,000, a little bit more, and people would still pay it. But they're all about value, and they want to get their products out to you and get them enjoyed. And the labor is cheaper in Cambodia, so they can make the katana a bit more reasonable because the labor's cheaper in Cambodia. And so they can keep the cost of the katana down. Show you that Suba again, the handguard made into the ocean waves. But yeah, so I'm glad that they did keep their prices down. And if you do want one, you might have to wait for a bit, but they'll get one in stock eventually for you. At Swords of the East, if you want to hold one, they need to take the full payment. But the nice thing about that is even if you change your mind before they ship it, they will refund your money back to you 100%. They don't keep any of the money. They're very good to deal with. And I asked them all the questions when I was getting serious about getting one. And they'll refund your money if you do change your mind or something in life comes up, because it is a bit of a lot of money for a katana that might just be a hobby for you. I didn't buy this katana. I believe it's never going to go up in value because they do have not tons of them out there, but there are examples out there. But if you go on to eBay, you won't see any of this ocean katana on there. You really don't ever see any come up on the used market much. And since there is a long waiting list, I think you could always at least get your money back for this katana. But guys, I hope you liked my review. I am going to do a review in the future where I do take the makugi pegs, the bamboo pegs, out of the suka, and I am going to take the suka, the handle, and the suka ito, and the kashira all comes off as one. And then I will show you the nakago. The nakago actually has the signature of the sword maker that made this sword, and also it has the signature of what type of katana it is and the date that it was finally made, because it's a long process to make these katanas. And if you want to find out more about how these katanas are made, like how I knew that they take the sledgehammer and pound out the 1075 steel to make this katana, and the Hinika wood and all of the different materials used for this katana, there's not very many videos. If you go into YouTube and put on the search bar Citadel Ocean Katana, there's only about maybe 8 examples of this katana. and maybe only seven, 6 or 7, where people have actually reviewed the sword itself. And you can go on there, but there's also like old footage from like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, of them actually making these katanas in Cambodia. It's not high def, but you can make out what they're doing. It's not horrible resolution. And that's kind of how I, when I started on this journey to get this katana, how I figured it out. Now, they Citadel does make two other katanas that are exactly the same blade but different fittings. They're still made out of cast iron, but some of them don't have designs like this has the rain. They don't have that. But one is called the Lotus Katana, and it is a little bit cheaper. Same blade, just a little more plain on the fittings, and it is a really nice katana made into kind of the lotus theme, like the lotus flower theme. And then and that one I think is right around $2,200, so a little bit cheaper than this one. But then there's also one called the bamboo katana, and it's just a few hundred less than this, maybe close to the same price. And you guessed it, it has more of a bamboo theme. But if you want the top of the line, the top one they make, Citadel makes, it would be this ocean katana that I just showed you. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed my review. I will be taking the handle off of this, and I will be looking at the Nakago, the Tang, and I will see the signature. Of course, they're written in Cambodian, but you also get a certificate of authentic, you know what I'm trying to say, authentication. Thank you for this blade, and it comes with your katana. And again, it's written in Cambodian, but it is what they use is kind of a simple design, a simple piece of paper. But that's what this whole katana is, done in complex, but actually going in simple ways also. So, guys, if you do have any questions for me, I'm just a very small independent channel. I make my videos on things that interest me, and far from being monetized. Just enjoy making these videos. Maybe could help somebody out. Maybe could help one of you out. But if you have any comments, I don't get that many comments. So shoot me a message. I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have any questions that I didn't answer for you here. Again, guys, my review of the Citadel Ocean Katana, and I hope you really enjoyed this review. And if you do want this katana, I think if you're looking for a high-end katana, this is my only katana. I'm not one that goes out and buys a bunch for $250 or $100 or $500. I just wanted one great katana that I could have for myself. Probably won't be cutting anything with this katana. I kind of bought it as a work of art, something I can enjoy looking at and holding each day, bringing me joy, having something high quality that'll last the rest of my life. And then I can pass it on to a loved one after I pass, and they can enjoy it. And I also bought it for home protection. That may sound a little silly, but I don't have any guns, and I just wanted to have something. And I actually have this when I wake up. It's right near my door. You never know, guys. You got to be able to protect yourself. If you call the police, they're not going to be showing up for quite a while, and you got to take matters into your own hands. And I did buy it also for home protection. So it's very easy to pick up, take the Saya, the sheath off, and you're ready to go. If you ever needed something, it's better than nothing. Okay, guys, my name's Joseph. I hope you like this review. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. Thank you.